Hey and welcome to the Anso Design Studio. I'm Jens Anso and today we are working on a fixed blade design. So today I want to introduce you to fixed blade designing. I've been making fixed blade more or less on off for 34 years. I had a long break from fixed blades when I started building folders and had to focus all my energy towards learning how to build a great folder. A few years ago I started making fixed blades again. This was one of the fixed blades I designed and made a couple of years ago. This is my personal hunting knife. This is a piece of Anso history in that I made this in my very first own workshop in my dormitory, the 9 square feet workshop more or less. And this is the Anso sheep's foot, the iconic design that you probably know by now. This was designed 25 years ago and recently reintroduced in a modern version. Today, we're doing a complete cold canvas fixed blade design. I came upon a number of steel billets in damaged steel, all identical sized, all identical patterns and all that, and figured that's a good exercise for me to design from known material rather than having all the options in the world. I'm narrowing it down to it has to fit within this billet of steel. And that's all I have to start today's design process with, and I'm actually really excited about that. In any design process, you need to have some kind of direction, or you find the direction as you go. This might be one of those cases. What I want to design with this is a relatively small utilitarian blade. I often design towards hunting, but equally well, I design for regular EDC. I've become so accustomed to designing folders, and for me, a folder is the do-all type of product. You have to design with so many uses in mind. So basically, all my folders work great in the everyday carry environment, which means cutting open envelopes, cutting a piece of string, cutting an apple, everyday chores. And I'm thinking that this fixed blade should function equally well in the everyday carry community or as a small carving knife, maybe for food preparation in one-day hike, something like that. I'm still working with my favorite pen, the Pilot BPS. I've mentioned this before. In my design process, erasers are banned. I like to document every single line that I draw. By not being able to go back and correct mistakes, I have the full design process documented. So without further ado, I'll just start sketching. Knowing that this is the limit of the design, I will have some kind of idea for the length of the blade. I'm thinking something like 3.5 inch for the blade. And this piece of steel is a little less than 5 inches, which doesn't allow for a full tang design. What it does allow for is a narrow tang design, which is very much the Nordic traditional way of building knife. This is a good example where I have the narrow tang design going down deep into the handle. Still a super strong construction, not as strong as the full tang where you can see the steel all around, but plenty strong for what we're working on here today. I settled for 3.5 inch or something like it. Incidentally, this is 3.25, so a little longer than this blade here. But still, this is not long enough for a narrow tang. So what I want to do is I want to design a extension for the steel for the tang, which most likely will be welded on, probably before heat treat, so that we can have an equally strong and hard tang. I'm only focused on the length of the blade at this point and somewhat of the usage. I'm thinking a drop point blade is ideal for something like this. So I'm just gonna start warming up the pen. For this project, I decided that this is 99% analog pen design. Often I will take a rough sketch and put into CAD, but for this project I will take it basically to finished design, then add it to CAD because I want to make 8 pieces that are of the same design. And this design will, at least in this version, be limited to 8 pieces in damaged steel. Then maybe I will make more in other steels, but at least for now, this is limited to 8 pieces. So what I sometimes do, I decided that we should go for 3.5 inch, which is 90 millimeters. So sometimes I will just mark out some guidelines on the piece of paper that will allow me to draw within these lines. But back to warming up, I will just sketch, find some direction and then refine one of these sketches. So one thing that I like to do, that even though I don't necessarily feel whatever sketch I'm drawing, I want to complete it to a certain point, because some of these sketches, if I force myself to finish it, I'm forcing myself to think it all the way through. Even though this design is somewhat uninspired yet, it will allow me to develop some details or some ideas for that next drawing. So already now I can see that this shape is not nearly what I'm after, but if I finish the drawing to a certain point, then it will help me on the next one, and next one, and next one. So one of the ideas that I want to pursue with this design is a 3-layer construction. If we have the blade construction with a narrow tang, and maybe that tang actually goes all the way to the back and connects to a lanyard loop construction, something kind of like that idea. It complicates the whole build quite a bit, but that's okay as well. What I don't want, or at least my initial idea is that I don't want it to be a takedown construction, but I might circle back on that because that actually makes this a really, really cool concept for me to work on. I'm somewhat inspired by right now at least, by the traditional puukko style knife that has been so strongly used in all of Scandinavia. We don't have a particular tradition in Denmark for making the puukko knife, but it's been heavily used. We were just importing them. And I just had a 5-minute break here and I was like, huh. I actually kind of like that idea of it being a takedown design. So that had me thinking about a technical solution for that immediately after. One of the most simple concepts of a takedown design is presented on this one, or the sheep's foot even. Takedown is really just illustrated by nothing is glued together. I have a very hard time putting things together with glue. I don't like it. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it don't, and it certainly has its place. So this design here is made up of a blade, full tang design, a couple of weight reduction mill outs in the blade to take out some steel. I made the same shape in the handle so it positions itself exactly where I want it to, even without the screws. So this is the basic of a takedown design. There's no glue here, which allows you to actually have a modular design, somewhat like the Anso sheep's foot, where it's also customizable by adding titanium details. The screws on both of these are titanium, and you have somewhat of the same idea behind the construction. Here I added a integral lanyard detail with these titanium inserts. This would be how I would generally think about a fixed blade design today. However, this mainly lends itself well to the full tang construction. And again, the full tang is where you see steel all surrounding the handle all the way around, which gives a super strong construction, that's for sure. You have steel in the full construction. However, with a narrow tang design like this one, you have the tang that goes all the way through the handle, and in this case it's pinned on this small brass thingy that acts as a stop in the sheath. A similar tang design is used on this Randall knife here, where the tang goes all the way through the handle and it's capped off with a nut here. This is not meant for taking it down, but you can make that same construction with that in mind. So you could actually go in and do some maintenance on the inside, or you could change the handle if that's what you want. But somewhat inspired by this type of construction, I think I want to make a takedown version, but with a narrow tang. One of the reasons to do that is have become intolerant to epoxy just for using epoxy for knives like this for so long and overexposing myself to it and not taking too much care, not getting the stuff on my hands. So I have an intolerance to epoxy to a point where even if I smell epoxy, it makes me nauseous. And that is one reason why I don't like to put things together with glue. But the other thing is I generally like to know how things are built. And if you're able to take things apart, it gives you that extra layer of experience. You can see how it's built, and you can actually add that experience for the end user, that he can take things apart, inspect it, modify it, or change handles if that's the intention of the design, like on both of these. There's some lanyard detail here that I want to somehow incorporate. At the same time, I want to be able to go in with a tool somehow to attach a cap or butt end here to the knife. I want it to be aesthetically pleasing, functionally strong, and easy access. So maybe I'm actually moving a little ahead of me, or ahead of the idea that I wanted to create a design for these 8 pieces alone, because now I'm starting to see some potential for a somewhat larger project. But this could at least be the test balloon to see if the idea is solid or not. With this sketch here, I actually think that I got very close to the blade shape that I want and some of the handle shape that I want. It's most often a bit into the sketching process that I find what I'm looking for. Other times it's an idea that has been just circling around my head for days or months or years that suddenly materializes itself on the paper in the first sketch. Here it took a little while, but I actually think that we are getting close to somewhere here. So here I have something that is relatively close to something that I could see myself making. Then I try to draw that knife again, and I suck at that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. Then I try to figure out what is it about this sketch that got the heart pumping. What is it that I feel, ooh, here's something. So in this case, it's actually adding just a little speed bump here for your index finger before it reaches into the edge. It's having some kind of ramp for your thumb. Let me see if I can illustrate this area here, if that's actually something where you would place your finger or your finger on the other side for carving. The blade shape itself is pretty close to something that I like. And again, this sketch is something that you have to interpret. What I see is not necessarily what you see. I see behind all these layers of lines, I see the essence of a rough sketch. So, and that's why I always try to recreate it, because then I can recreate or aim for recreating the essence of what I saw here. I think at this point, this is as far as I can take it today, or at least as far as I can take it in this episode. I'm super close to something that has potential. What I generally do is I will put sketches aside and then let them simmer a little. And by simmering, I mean I will just let them sit. My brain will probably continue to work on the concept. And then I will revisit these sketches at a later point, take them into CAD, add some details there. But what I always enjoy about these sketch processes is I have a general idea where I will start. I don't necessarily have an idea of where it will end. Let's return to this in a later episode. If you enjoyed what you have seen in this episode, remember to hit like, post a comment, question, whatever, and subscribe. And we'll take this up at a later date. Thank you so much.